Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a podcast dedicated to helping accounting professionals start and have the premier accounting firm in their area, offering quality accounting services and getting paid what they're worth. This is an episode designed to actually help you get the confidence and competence you need to go out and get the clients you deserve. It's in these episodes that we actually cover topics ranging from marketing, sales, pricing. We'll cover topics such as onboarding clients, client relations, things that you can be doing to offer more quality services. These things are intended to actually help you have the confidence and competence you need to succeed offering these quality accounting services. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and for more than 20 years, I've been working with accounting professionals to help them do exactly this. It's my hope that through the interviews that I have with the experts, that I'm able to share with you the tidbits you need to be successful. Today, I have a wonderful guest, someone I'm excited to speak with. It's Bobby Martin. Bobby is the co-founder and CEO of Vertical IQ. It's a leading provider of industry intelligence that helps sales and marketing professionals better understand a prospect or a customer's business challenges before, during, and after the sales meetings. His focus is on advising and selling to small and mid-sized business owners, business leaders, and digital transformations. He is currently an active angel investor and advisor in several innovative startups. Through his experience of starting and selling a sales intelligence tool for Fortune 500 firms, Dun & Bradstreet, he's learned firsthand the challenges and solutions at each stage of the entrepreneurial growth, which has led to his book, The Hockey Stick Principles. He is a frequent speaker on subjects such as industry intelligence, sales readiness, and change management. Vertical IQ happens to have insights that accountants and financial advisors can use so that they can actually meet their clients' needs. It provides their clients with guidance informed by the latest industry data. Your small to mid-sized business basically looks at you for sage advice on financial drivers impacting their business. With Vertical IQ's industry intelligence, you can offer tailor-made recommendations and become an invaluable asset to your client's business. So with that, Bobby, welcome to the show.
Roger, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So I'm just going to want to get to the basics here and really kind of understand what's your story? How did you get into this niche of providing research for the purpose of helping business relationships, helping the salesperson or the business expert relate and understand the industry better?
Yeah, sure. In a way, I kind of fell into it, but I certainly got into the world of industry intelligence with a perspective of, how do you add value to a client relationship as an accident. It was one of those things where some pieces came together. But in the 1990s, I was in my 20s, low to mid 20s, and I was a bank calling officer.
Okay.
And actually, I worked a good bit with accountants at that time. But my job was to call on businesses. And there were a few things that led to me realizing that it didn't make a ton of sense to be able to be as much of an expert as I can in someone's business before I go meet with them or while I'm meeting with them.
Uh-huh.
So I was riding around and one of our big customers. I was in the back seat of the car. My boss was in the front seat of the car, and this gentleman's name was Mark, and he owned a big steel company. And we were asking him what made this other bank calling officer from our competition such a good one. And he thought about it for a few minutes, and he said, he's smart. He asks good questions. Then he paused for a second. And he says, he actually knows a lot about steel. And I thought, that's just really interesting to me. And that was sort of the genesis. It was that plus all these other clues that I realized when you keep the conversation on the client and you show up prepared to talk about their business in a real way, how hungry they are for advisors that can do that. And that led to me really becoming a phenomenal salesperson, at least in the world of banking. And it led to the creation of my first industry research companies. That's kind of how it happened, I guess.
So that car ride obviously started this whole thing. I'm amazed that you're able to pinpoint it to that one experience.
I know it really was. It knocked me over. I was really curious what made this guy. His name is Sam Catlett, That's his name. You can find him. Actually, I went and got his permission to use his name, and he was laughing about that. He was, "Oh yeah, my banking days," but he was really good, and that was one of the clues. I couldn't believe I was finding out what his secret sauce was, but I did deploy it. Like I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do, and I started creating these PowerPoint presentations that were all about the client. So I would, let's say I was trying to pitch a new client, and I would create a PowerPoint. It would be like 30 or 40 pages, and it was all about them. Well, 80% of it was all about them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would do is learn everything I could through the process and then show them what kind of things they are dealing with and how I can help them. And that's what led to, that was my secret sauce. And I kind of thought I was going to start a business that was doing that, showing people how to make these PowerPoint presentations. But it was the industry intelligence was my big gap.
So here's one of the things that stands out to me from a sales perspective is so often I think people who misunderstand sales feel that it's how well can I explain what I do and point out the features and benefits of my offering, when in reality, it's how well can you listen and actually understand what interests let's say in the case, the purchaser. And what you've done a great job of doing here is illustrating that what we want to do is like Dale Carnegie teaches, we want them to talk about what they're most interested in, which is themselves. And if we can carry on that conversation and sound intelligent, all of a sudden that person is more intrigued with us. They feel understood. And I think the curiosity, the natural curiosity that we're experiencing there, that we're expressing to them, causes them to see that we're actually interested in their best interests. And that's, I think what you're tapping into is that emotional need that is so helpful at the sales level. So as you evolved here, you get to a point in your baking career that you then later started this company. Tell me about the start of the business.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I think you articulated that very well. And speaking of Dale Carnegie, what else Dale had to say in his book is Making Friends and Influencing People.
That's right.
Yeah, he said that the art of questioning is not asking really broad general questions, but asking specific detailed questions that hit to the heart of what somebody really truly cares about. So you don't ask like, how was your day? Or cliche, you avoid the cliche, or how's business, or tell me more about your business. You say, hey, I was reading that in, your particular type of business, maybe the steel industry, the prices have fallen 30% a year. How has that affected your business? That's hitting to the heart of the matter. And that's what Dale Carnegie wonderfully articulated. But it's great you brought his name up. But yeah, so I started the business. It was interesting is that the way that I could see the biggest challenge was, okay, how do I get the information to be smart about a particular business, to ask them really good questions? And at the bank I worked at, Nations Bank, which is now Bank of America, we had an industry research department. And what I would do is fill out a form, and you had to fill out a week in advance. You'd fill the form out, you'd literally fax it in, and then hopefully within a week, you get in the inter-office mail a stack of industry research on that particular topic, right? And so I went to that department because I started forming these cheat sheets. And what I would do is every time I'd order one, which was probably too often, I would sit there and take notes of everything that I thought was relevant. And I would really just turn those into questions, really specific questions. And then I went to them and said, you should take my cheat sheets, which is just a page or two long, and put them on the intranet at Nations Bank so that all the bankers could use them, because the people around me wanted them. Like, hey, do you have anything on printing or whatever?
Yeah, you did all the legwork at that point, compiling this.
That's right. And so they didn't want to do that. They didn't think that was a good idea. And that kind of led to the genesis of my first industry research company. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this. And it was a lot of fun.
What I like about that story and how it resonates with me is there's a lot to be said about this big portfolio of information about what's the industry trends and what to know about the industry itself. But one of the things that's helpful is back in the school days, I'm old enough that they were referred to as Cliff Notes. Today, they're referred to as Spark Notes with the younger generation.
That's right.
And it's essentially, what do I do to see at a glance the highlights of this larger portfolio of information that if I wanted to, I could go deeper into it. but it's not even a Reader's Digest version. And in fact, I wonder how many of the listeners even remember what Reader's Digest is. But it's
I
not
do.
even the Reader's Digest version. It's more this Spark Notes or Cliff Note version of that industry. That's how I see it. Is that a good depiction of what you're describing?
It very much is. I think that it is an executive summary of the industry, but it's from the perspective of what an advisor would want to know. So, like, we have a lot of clients that are CPAs and accountants, for example, and they do use Vertical IQ for business development. But the type of information they need, because this is the type of information they're going to discuss with their clients, is financially driven. So a lot of it would be like, what are the financial ratios that are really important in this industry? How
Yeah.
does working capital and cash flow work in this industry? And if you're talking about 500 industries, it gets pretty specific. And but to that person who owns the lumber company or the carpet manufacturing or whatever it is, it's really quite what they want to know. It's right in their wheelhouse, but they are Spark Notes or Cliff Notes on each one of those topics, whether it's business valuation, financial, or industry trends or industry challenges or whatever it may be.
What you've done there is you've really kind of tapped into the accountant's interests, which are all those numbers and ratios, because then that allows us to get into what's referred to as benchmarking. We're able to see what the industry standards or norms are and see then how the particular company then corresponds or relates to those set standards. So now you're really getting into the nitty gritty of not just terms and vocabulary or trends, but you're getting into numbers and standards. And I really like that part of it.
Yes, yes, and that part of it's very relevant and very important to the business owner because if you look at, like, take the typical small medium sized business, if they have 5 to 10 million in revenue, many of these businesses cannot afford a really expensive CFO, but their accountant can become their CFO essentially. But it's really great to be able to have an accountant who is also an advisor to their financials, big pictures. Like, let me give you an example real quickly.
Yeah.
Let's say the business has a debt to equity ratio of 1.5 to 1, but the industry average is 3 to 1. Then they could say, benchmarking, you're under leveraged, but maybe you feel comfortable having less debt than the average company. However, if you decided to lever the company more and borrow more money to grow faster, would you feel comfortable doing that and helping you business grow 10 to 15% a year instead of the 3 to 5% it's growing now? That would be the type of, and that of course is a conversation. That's not an answer. That should be a question.
That's right.
But that's an example.
So many of the accounting professionals that I work with, after they've become very confident in their ability to deliver quality accounting services, naturally find themselves at some point in their career wanting to move into this part-time CFO or this advisory role that you mentioned. And so as a tool, this is basically enabling that. And I see it on two sides. One is the conversation at the sales level. It allows the client to see that there's a competency here going on with the individual that they're talking to, and it allows you to more confidently have that conversation. But then once you've acquired the client in that capacity as their CFO or perhaps advisor, it allows you to then have the tool, the means that you need to fulfill this competently and ask the questions just like you posed, so that you actually look like you're fulfilling the role that you established. I'm now coming in not just as the accounting professional, but now that advisor or CFO. So that context is perfect. Where's the passion for this? Why are you so passionate about what you're doing in creating or producing this content for us?
Yeah, it's like putting a puzzle together. I absolutely love it, and I think that the passion comes from the fact that I lived it myself, and it was many years ago. But and I would say too now as a business owner, how much I love talking about my business. I mean, you can kind of tell by listening to me probably.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love this business, and I think that I am not an exception. I think that 90% of an accountant's clients are also in love with their business. And if anyone would be so kind to want to speak with them in a real strategic way, in a real deep way about the business and how it works and how it can improve, a vast majority of them love that and therefore love you. They will then be more likely to find the fees worth it and maybe even pay more fees. They're more likely to refer you to other clients, and it just works really well. But I think I'm just real passionate about the business itself, and I think that's true of all business owners.
Just because of my own personal fascination with business, just looking at your sheets, the little pro formas that you've created or portfolios you've generated, I find it actually a very interesting read, only because it's fun to look a little deeper into the industries. It's almost like the how is it made kind of philosophy is how's that business running. So I actually find it interesting just to, out of curiosity, look at these different little industry exposés. So that personally just is of interest, regardless of whether or not I'm working with a client. But then once I've read it, I feel like I'm more able to carry on a conversation with an individual just at a deeper level about certain industry needs, trends, what's going on. Right now, just as an example, there's a lot of conversation that's happening regarding the supply chain here in the nation and the problems that are coming up with the ports and with the rail systems and the trucking industry. And as you dive deeper into each industry, it's fascinating some of the challenges they're each facing and some of the things that have kind of unraveled in each to cause this huge problem. But I would assume a lot of that would be found in your information.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And in fact, COVID, in a way, COVID put a lot of pressure on vertical IQ in both a good way and a bad way. A bad way is that people during COVID in 2020, more than a year ago, that our business was down because not many people were looking to buy industry research. They were busy taking care of their clients. The accountants, for example, were very busy with their clients with PPP and advising them and all of that. Everybody was just like that.
Yeah.
But we actually had to get in high gear at the same time because these industries were changing so rapidly. So what we did was we created COVID updates for every industry, and we started with an update every week or two for every industry. So our entire industry research team turned its guns towards nothing but updating, no new content. And what we were doing was following these industries and the effect COVID was having on everything we could put our hands on that was relevant, following data. And those COVID updates were so popular that we still do them each industry once a month. We still calling them COVID updates, but now they're turning into supply chain issues. But anyway, those are actually free on our website. So at verticaliq.com, site visitors can go to our free COVID updates and see what's happening in all the industries. So yeah, it's been a pull, but 2021 was fantastic for Vertical IQ because we bounced back and everybody all of a sudden realized they needed industry research from that perspective to advise their clients.
Yeah. Now, I'm just curious, being that you see this data and I'm assuming are privy to some of these reports, is there anyone in particular that personally stands out to you that you found fascinating or interesting about business and what's happening and how things have changed?
Oh yes. So it's been fascinating. You would think certain industries would be hammered, like in retail, for example. And of course, we all know about the bicycle shops where they can't even keep inventory for two reasons. Number one is they can't get the supply fast enough. And then number two, everyone wants a bicycle. And so the most interesting industries, in my opinion, are these retail type businesses. Another would be like campers. The trailer and camper business. It's been off the charts. I mean, literally, if you have a used camper, you could sell it for 30 or 40% more than what you paid for it, even though it's 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And that's because of supply and demand, of course. Supply is way down, demand is way up. So tracking these statistics have been interesting. And we try to get data out in front of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the census. There's this plethora of data sources for all of these industries, but then going straight to the industry as well has been incredibly interesting. But yeah, to answer your question, I think the retail business has been most interesting by far.
Wow. Okay, good. Let me ask a question about just accountants in general. There's a lot of generalists in the profession where rather than specializing in any particular niche or going deep with maybe CFO type advisory services, they're more, let's say, tax preparers, maybe bookkeepers that are more preparing the financial reports. A lot of our listeners may consider themselves generalists in those terms. So how can a journalist build knowledge and utilize this kind of information as a way of maybe showing that they care about their clients and could maybe transition or move into that more accountant or advisory role?
Yeah, sure. I do think vertical IQ and industry intelligence in general is most relevant to generalists, to your point, because obviously, an accountant, it's difficult to say, I only want to focus on one particular industry, especially depends on the size of your city and town. So many or most are indeed generalists, meaning they serve all sorts of different types of businesses. Now, vertical IQ is, of course, relevant because you can't be an expert in any one of these industries, or I should say 400 industries. But what you can do in a matter of 30 minutes is become way smarter than the average bear or way smarter than an average accountant who is not prepared. And the way you do that, obviously, is just use tools like vertical IQ and others. Even the internet. The internet is a great way to do research, but you get in there and you prepare yourself with things that you already know. So what I mean by that is many of the type of content you'll read in industry intelligence like vertical IQ, you're reminding yourself that you know that because accountants are obviously very well educated in business and they read a lot. They've learned a lot. They've met with a lot of businesses themselves normally. So what that means is when they read the content in vertical IQ and other sources, it's reminding them of topics they already know about. They're like, oh yes, that's why we have a mobile app, for example, because we have all the content on the mobile app. They're thumbing through there going, oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. And so what they can do is therefore become an expert on a business that's in a particular industry during that hour-long conversation. And of course, it just builds from there. Like you have a really powerful, compelling conversation for an hour. And then that, of course, leads to even more important conversation the next time you meet. So that's just the whole idea. I also recommend that accountants, that they become specialists in 3 to 5 different industries. Like if they're pure generalists, they should strongly consider tweaking their business model to pick 3 to 5 industries, maybe where they are quite accomplished and they do have multiple clients in those particular industries. And I made up 3 to 5. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 7 or 8. Do you have any advice about that, Roger? I mean, you're the expert with accountants. I mean,
I actually do. There's a lot to be said for being a generalist, especially when starting out. I see a lot of people just trying to get their feet wet as to what industry interests them or fascinates them, or more importantly, what do they resonate with marketing wise to acquire. But after time, I think it's only wise to then niche. It doesn't mean that you necessarily stop doing bookkeeping or accounting services or tax services for any particular business, but it does mean you focus or tailor your marketing to appeal to a certain industry type so that you can more easily acquire them and start working with them. And then they become a larger and larger percent of your portfolio that you're working with. But niching, it has a lot of advantages. Obviously, with your type of service, it allows you to go deeper into the industry, deeper into the client, allows you to become more of an expert in that space. And doing so, you can obviously start charging more for the services that you're providing. but it allows you to become so much better at the job you're doing for the client. It's more than just producing financials. It's now giving analysis and interpretations, trends, forecasting, budgeting that is so much more valuable to the client. So I do like the idea of niching. I think it does bring some passion into the work just because you become that much more of an expert in a given area. And using a tool like your own, it just enables us to more intelligently sell the service. We're able to market and sell it a little bit more confidently, but then fulfill it definitely a lot more in depth. So it's a win-win in both the strategy of marketing to get the client and then a win on the idea of delivering a much more qualified service. So what we're discussing here really does resonate with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see too, certain industries, when you niche, that you begin to offer services, accounting services specific for those niches, whether it's counting inventory, helping with accounts receivable. There's a number, of course, things to say. We work with a lot of firms who deal with this particular issue every year. So we've created essentially a product slash service, and it's very turnkey. And then you provide it to those clients, and then of course it should be very profitable for you because you've gotten really good at doing it. And what do you think about that? Is that something that you see from time to time?
I do see the advantage that niching brings is all of a sudden you become much more respected and valuable in the industry that you're targeting. So you can now get to the point rather than being a generalist and you're kind of anywhere and everywhere and doing well, by the way, but it allows you to niche and then maybe join some related associations, participate in those associations, maybe actually speak at those associations, become that industry expert. It really does lend itself to a wonderful experience, particularly in the niche space that you're now targeting. So I think from basically a passion level, it allows you to really get excited about the work and make a difference in a lot of people's businesses. So it's got a lot of advantages.
Sure.
Now, let me ask you a question. You've seen a lot going on within the industries.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular industry that one should consider niching in because there's so much volatility and so much opportunity in it?
Yeah, so here's a way to look at niching in terms of choosing those industries, in my opinion. Well, first of all, I think that accountants should take a step back, look at data, like for example, Vertical IQ. We have a lot of local economic data, local economic and industry data. And so what I recommend they do is go in and look at their particular county or their particular city
Uh-huh.
and say, which is in Vertical IQ, and you go straight to your city. And then we basically list all of the industries and the number of employees in those industries for your particular county or city, the number of locations and companies, and sort them and say, okay, there are 103 machine shops in Raleigh, North Carolina, right? And then this is how many employees are employed in machine shops to get a feel for how big these companies are and how fragmented this industry is in my particular area. But I think that really going through that exercise of looking at your area very strategically is a good way to do it. Now, obviously, you want to do something more things than just look at the number of businesses and analyze and dissect it. In addition to that, I believe you also want to go in there and look at the most profitable industries, industries who have a lot of accounting needs, of course. Ones that are inventory intensive, ones that are transaction intensive, audit intensive, whatever it may be. And then thirdly, which is most important, is what industry am I passionate about? So you kind of take a step back and go, man, my grandfather was in furniture, for example. Of course, I just made that up. My grandfather wasn't, but that is a really interesting industry to me for that reason or other reasons. And that causes you to become fascinated with it. And then, of course, looking at your own client, your own book of business is also relevant. But you kind of put that piece of that puzzle together, all the pieces together to try to figure out which one you're passionate about. So that's how I recommend going about that. What do you think about that strategy?
I like it a lot. And one of the things that I'll add to that is when you're creating your pro forma, just to kind of explore what opportunities exist, you can do like you've just described, look at the local area and see whether or not there's a demand. One of the things that I like to add regarding the passion statement, you brought up the grandfather, it's the hobbies. What hobbies interest you? And if you were, like you were earlier describing bikes and going outside and maybe riding around, maybe it's mountain biking and so forth. Well, if that interests you and intrigues you, why not then offer accounting services to that industry? It's the bike parts, it's the bike manufacturers, it's the retail shops that sell bikes. And in doing so, you'll probably get some added benefit of maybe some opportunities to get discounted product or maybe see some free product. And it's simply because you're servicing that industry. I think once you tap into what your interests are, what your hobbies are, those naturally become then passions that you can become very profitable in. So your explanation there was spot on. Now let me bring this kind of full circle then. There's two ways of looking at this. What your services are is, first of all, helping someone become an industry, if not expert, at least knowledgeable enough that they can intelligently carry on a conversation about it, ask the right questions. It helps at the sales level, knowing when you're going in to meet with a business owner, what you can more intelligently do to prepare for that conversation. And then after acquiring the client, it allows you to then more intelligently meet their needs and service their expectations intelligently because you're watching the trends going on in the industry. Mm-hmm. What would you say about the marketing and sales side? How does this actually help there? I'd like your kind of your thoughts on that.
Oh yeah. Well, that's obviously a big part of of our value proposition is the fact that if you do these things and you keep the conversation on them and you ask questions that are all about them and listen carefully, then you're going to be a more effective salesperson. Essentially, you'll be better at business development. And so, more specifically, it's about pre-call preparation. Or I should say pre-meeting preparation. I don't think accountants call. They don't make calls. They meet. They have meetings. Pre-meeting preparation is absolutely key to business development. Yeah. I do not think accountants have time to go hog wild with it. You have to forgive me, I'm from the South, so the hog wild is a way of saying too much of it. But I think that sitting down for 30 minutes or an hour is an absolutely great, basically best practice to be successful. And, I tell people, I say, it's not that you have to do it any particular way. You can literally schedule on your calendar to leave 15 minutes early and use an app to prepare for the meeting using Vertical IQ's app right there in the parking lot or on the way to the call. Or you can schedule an hour once a week for yourself to think about each client you're going to meet with or each prospect you're going to meet with to do that preparation and jotting down the questions that are most relevant to your conversation. And it just doesn't take a lot of time, but it certainly you end up with a much higher close ratio, meaning that, hey, I got referred to this person. They're talking to 3 or 4 different accountants. It makes a big difference. They're going to choose you instead. So, What do you think about that, Roger? Do you agree? I mean, I totally agree about that.
Mentally before a sales call to actually outside in the parking lot, as you were describing, kind of refresh myself as to not only the vocabulary, but some of the numbers, some of the terms, all of those things, just as that fresh reminder before walking in the door to meet with that potential client or even the client themselves, is a great way of demonstrating how this can be useful. And I appreciate it because I think it's very practical. It's exactly what in the business world people need to be doing. And it's something that I remember doing when I was making sales calls is I would research the company before I went in. I would look them up on the internet. I'd read through their About Us page so I knew a little bit about their mission statement. I would learn a little bit about how they started and who was involved in the organization. The About Us page is basically their explanation of what's interesting to them, what they like to talk about. And I want to know that. But then to complement it with the information you're providing allows me to go in really on my A game. And that's one of the things that I think is so helpful. The other thing I would add to this is I think there's another useful application of this information that a lot of accounting professionals would appreciate knowing. And it's the fact that we're oftentimes looking for what can we be writing about? Those of us that write blogs or maybe have newsletters, what is it that we might be able to post online that could be of interest to our audience, to our clients? And if we're just trying to be that information source to remain relevant and be seen as that expert, what a greater resource than Vertical IQ to take that information that's available even at that local level and start giving some information where I'm able to cite as a source this data, and more importantly, kind of articulate it in a way that's readable for the reader to kind of read through and learn from as well. So I like that element and wanted to share that. So let me go ahead and switch up the gears here. I'm going to change our conversation a little slightly.
Sure.
Right now, we're in a position where there's a lot of volatility, perhaps in people's lives. People have been impacted with health issues. People have been impacted with the economy the way it is, travel, vacationing. I'm just kind of curious, for you, what does freedom mean to you? What are you thinking of when I say the word freedom?
That's a really good question. To my mind, freedom is about being able to make personal choices that, enable you to do the things you want to do. And when I think of freedom, I think all the way to the United States and the freedoms that we have to be able to start our own business, to run the business the way we want to, that's ethical and fair and reasonable, that give people the opportunity to enjoy their profession, to make it really fun. And, I think that when you take a step back, it really is more fun to have that innate curiosity to really think about the other person's business and find out what they think is freedom to them, and just keep the conversation on them. But that's what comes to mind for me.
Good. I like that.
How about you? Right back at you.
Nice one. Freedom to me.
Touché.
There you go. Yeah, freedom to me is exactly what you were referring to. It is choice. I think there's a lot to be said for my ability to choose for myself, and then in turn deal with the consequences that may follow, whether they be good or bad. It's the liberty for me to be able to do my own research and decide for myself how, when, and what to do. There's a lot to be said about this at a global level, and maybe I'm going to go a little too deep here, but because you asked, I will. America is very, very unique. In other countries, whether it be a monarchy exists where you have respect for the crown and you are raised with this idea of obedience to whatever is dictated, or you are raised in a country where there is a greater sense of we do things for the masses, the common good, rather than self. Self is secondary to everyone else's benefit, and we sacrifice for the greater good. In those situations, liberty is lost, and freedom, self-worth and self-actualization is deterred. And here in America, it's quite different. I think that we are raised, many of us, with this belief that we are independent, and before sacrificing, we have to take care of ourselves. And it's two basic principles in my mind. First of all, I strongly believe you can't give what you don't have. So if I don't have wealth, if I don't have time, if I don't have, let's say, even happiness, it's hard for me to give to another something I don't currently have. Where in other societies, I think it's more, what does everyone else have, and we'll collectively gather it and reassess and meet everyone's needs. And so I do believe in freedom. And then the second thing that I'd also point out is there's freedom of thought. I don't know that there is an absolute right way to do everything. And so I think there has to be some respect for someone else's ability to consider a different new way of doing something. And oftentimes it's those creative thoughts that lead to some amazing creations. But if we were just trying to say be conformative and do it this way, I think we're just limiting our potential. And so I like the idea of freedom and experiment and difference. And as long as it's not impacting other people, as long as it's not negatively causing harm or whatever to someone else, I'm very libertarian in that regard. And so I'm very much of the opinion that freedom is something that is individual. And I'm very much of the opinion that as long as we're willing to own the consequences, good or bad, I'm more than happy to have somebody go out and do what they think they ought to be doing.
Gosh, I thought that was very well said, Roger. I passionately agree, and I just think that a lot of times people out there, they have their thought process is less so about freedom and liberty, and more so, too much so, about collectivism or socialism or whatever the right term is. And America, that's one of the things that makes this country really wonderful and really unique is that freedom of choice and living with the consequences. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
you make a very good point about living with the consequences, and I big believer in that as well. And it's a beautiful, beautiful experiment that America and United States took on, and it's working really well. And let's keep it going. Freedom, baby,
Amen.
love it.
Amen. Amen to that. Yeah, I think it's sad when people start to impose what they feel everyone else should be doing because they think it's the right thing to be doing. This is
Right.
how I articulate it now. My phrase is you had me until you said I had to. If you
Yeah.
can articulate very well and be very compelling as to why you think something should be a certain way, that's amazing. I'm all more than happy to listen, and I feel I'm an intelligent enough person to be persuaded as to a better way. But the moment you then couch it with, and you have to,
Right.
I'm now confused. I'm bewildered. If it was so convincing and compelling, why are you making me do it? And that's where you lose me, and that's where I put up the red flags, and I'm like, okay, something else is going on here. There's an ulterior motive. There's something happening, because as much as you may think you have my best interests at heart, because you're insisting I do it and making me do it, I no longer believe you have my best interests at heart. And so I'm of
That's
the
great.
opinion that until you get to that point, you're intelligent, you're articulate, you're persuasive. I see the compelling information. I love what's going on. You're making a great case. I think I'm behind you. And then if you just acquiesce to that last thing of, and you have to, you just lost me. So that is not, in my opinion, the American way. There is no such thing in America, in my opinion, that says, and you have to. So that's where you lost me.
I agree passionately.
Yeah.
That's good stuff, Roger. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm going to ask one last question before wrapping this up. My last question is what are you grateful for?
You know, I am really grateful to be able to do things like this, to come on and chat with you and have these freedoms that we were talking about. I'm very grateful for my relationship with God. I'm very grateful for my relationship with my family. And I'm very grateful for to be able to start my own business and have a go at it. So grateful for a lot, man. Grateful to live in this country. Thanks for asking. How about you?
First of all, amen to that. I'm going to ditto a lot of what you said. I consider myself to be a God-fearing man. I say that because at the end of the day, I do feel I'm going to have to give an accounting for what I've done. And I believe that even those things that I presume no one else knows of, I'm still going to have to answer for. And so I try to live my life where I can hold my head high and believe that I've been honest in my dealings with my fellow man. I'd like to believe that I've been truthful. I'd like to think that I've held up my side of the bargain, and I'd like to think I've made people happy. So that's important to me. As for this great country, I couldn't agree with you more. I think this is an amazing. I believe it was founded on some very important principles that I'm so honored that the founding fathers did what they did and sacrificed what they did. Those that led to the independence that we experienced, they gave so much. They gave of treasure and life and their own liberties in many regards, and I'm very much indebted to that. And I'm grateful for the country that we live in, the technologies and the such that have brought about so many comforts. But the one thing I would add is, like you said, family and friends. The older I get, the more I appreciate the relationship I have with my children, with my spouse, with my friends, my colleagues. I work with some amazing people. I couldn't do anything that I do without their help and support, their expertise. And so very grateful for that. And I'll end with my health. I'm very grateful for my health. It's the ability to wake up in the morning and enjoy the day with the strength that I have that's so amazing. So very blessed.
Nice.
Lots of things to be grateful for.
Good stuff. Yeah. I'll bet you the listeners could hop in and join us with that. So, three cheers.
Well, yeah, I would encourage the listeners reflect for a moment. What are you grateful for? Simply because if you have an attitude of gratitude, you more see around you the things that are good. If you don't have an attitude of gratitude, I think you tend to be more negative, and you're more likely to be pessimistic because you don't literally see the things around you that you're blessed with. But that attitude of gratitude enlightens you. It's like putting on those glasses that you need that just bring out the truth. And I hope you're wearing those glasses to be able to see and recognize those many things in your life that you're blessed with. So there you go. Here's what I'm going to do, Bobby. I'm going to wrap this up.
Okay.
I'm going to wrap it up with a few things. The first of which is some offers that I'd like to encourage our listeners to take advantage of. They can go to the episode description. If you go to the episode description, you'll actually find there a free demo to learn how you can actually benefit within your firm using Vertical IQ, and at the same time receive those weekly updates that Bobby was mentioning earlier that are now available for free. The second thing I want to actually encourage you to take advantage of is there is a book there. It is in the black. 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable. It is actually a how-to guide for you to actually work in your business to ensure that profit is in fact deliberate and intentional. But also I'd like to recommend another book for you. It's one called Red to Black in 30 Days. It is the accountant's quick guide to actually help businesses transform from being in the red to being in the black. This is the accountant's guide that you should have to actually go in and, as an expert, address the things that they need to that really helps them with the most challenging thing that many businesses struggle with, which is cash flow. So if you want to actually be that business first responder and literally help your businesses, your clients go from red to black, I'd highly recommend that you also get a copy of Red to Black. Now, these 2 books, as well as this offer to take advantage of the free demo with Vertical IQ, exist in the episode description. So I invite you to go there and get that information. Now, as a recap, let me just summarize a few of the highlights. It's first of all the power that can come from our efforts as accounting professionals to learn our clients' industries. The better we know what they're doing and dealing with, what they're having to address as they're running their companies, better suits us to, first of all, go in well prepared for any sales discussions that we have when offering our services, to go in and really ask the right questions and show an interest in what it is they do. But then once acquiring them as clients, it gives us a phenomenal opportunity to dive even deeper still into what it is we can be doing, especially as accounting professionals, CFOs, or even advisors, to help them do more with their information, the numbers that they're using to run their business, literally to help them, in fact, make more informed business decisions. So I think this is definitely something worth looking into and checking out. I also love the conversation that I had with Bobby regarding both freedom and gratitude. We all as individuals need to take a pause and reflect how blessed we are, and even recognize or realize what we have going for us. There's a lot to be said for that, and I'm glad we had that conversation. It was very special to me. So with that being said, Bobby, what are your final thoughts?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, Roger, and thanks everybody for listening. I think it was a very interesting, fun discussion, and really, really great questions. A few things to remember is just to be value added. You know, the way to be value added with your clients is be really well prepared for those discussions. And remember, if you're really well prepared, your business development will improve as well. So not only will the client benefit from your value addedness, but you will get more clients as well and land a higher percentage. And I certainly enjoyed the conversation about freedom. I think we should speak up more often about how we feel about freedom and the things we love about America. So thank you very much for including me in that. And of course, grateful to be here. Thank you very much, Roger.
Yeah, this was a pleasure. I enjoyed our conversation, Bobby. I think the world of not only what you've done professionally, but that was a great conversation as well regarding the freedom and gratitude. With that being said, let me just invite all of you as listeners to listen to our other episodes where we have this same type of conversation and learn from the experts various things that we can be doing to run our businesses more effectively and, in fact, offer quality accounting services. Always remember to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. That's where you'll get notifications as to the weekly episodes as they're released. And then for more information on how you can apply these principles in your business, visit us at universalaccountingschool.com or give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Do take care, be safe out there, and have a great day.